This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Summer is officially over, and I've been crying for the last week, but the weather's still been gorgeous. Here in the Okanagan, we always get really, really beautiful Septembers, and the weather usually stays nice even like a few weeks into October. So gardening season isn't done, so I figured I'd do a quick update on how the garden is looking. I really haven't been doing very much on it, so it doesn't look the way I want it to look. But despite all the neglect, you know, there's still things happening. At the beginning of the year, I bought a ton of dahlias from Costco. I think I had like 75 dahlias in total, and they were mixed bags, so I didn't know what they were gonna look like. I potted them up, and then in mid-June I got them into the garden, and they didn't really do very much. And you know, I wasn't really sure if there was going to be any dahlias at all this year. But as soon as the nights got longer, so that the evenings got a little bit cooler, the dahlias really started to explode. I'm kind of amazed how tall some of these are. They're a little bit overgrown with bindweed. I've done some work to try to deal with the bindweed, but it's been really challenging because it's just kind of getting up underneath all the plants. But despite that, there's been lots of blooms, and what I really wanted was blooms, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna see what dahlias there are, because they were mixed bags, and decide what it is that I like enough to dig up and save the tubers, and which ones I'm kind of like, I can pass on this. These beautiful, gorgeous things, I don't know the name of anything, but I'm like, oh, these are definitely on the keeper list. But there's a couple highlighter yellow ones that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I have to keep those. So we'll see what they look like when the tubers dig up. And if they're like big, beautiful plants, really prolific tuber producers, then maybe they'll tempt me. But yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure as I dig them up to mark things so I know what's what. But yeah, really exciting that, this time of year, there's actually some flowers that I have to pick out of my garden to bring into my house. The rest of this garden area is a pretty big mess. There was a lot of yarrow that as I went and I planted in tulip bulbs, and I planted in, some perennials that are planted into this space. I really like yarrow. It was the white weedy yarrow, but I figured, it does such a good job of keeping the weeds down that I'll just keep it in the space. I like yarrow blooms, so I'm glad to have it, and I'll take it out and replace it as needed. But because, I've been watering this space over the summer, the yarrow has really taken over. It's done a good job of keeping the other weeds down, but the yarrow is starting to look a lot like a weed in this space. So I haven't done it yet. I'm hoping I'll be able to get to it this year, but I'm hoping to take out a lot of the yarrow. If I can get this area at the end of the season, kind of all those perennial weeds cleaned out, it'll give me a little bit of a blank palette, blank space to work with come spring when I start planting other things into this area. My absolute dream for this space is to be able to have like an English cottage garden where, it's a whole mix of flowers, maybe I can have some perennial food in there, things like berry bushes and stuff like that. But just to have it kind of this rambling, overgrowing space, it's quite a bit of a slope to it. So if I could just kind of really fill it in a mass, not necessarily worry about like beds and paths and spacing, just kind of create like a really wild feeling space, I'd be really happy with it. But I need to start getting those plants in, because if I can get those perennial flowers in, they'll start to kind of outcompete the weeds with a little bit of help from me. So next year. It's on priority list for next year. The other really important weed priority to deal with is the half of my vegetable garden that I didn't get to. This space is like really nasty bindweed. I got the bindweed somewhat dealt with on one half of this kind of garden space, but this side was just too much. And at this point I'm feeling like maybe I need to get more aggressive. Maybe, you know, maybe I need to actually use like a herbicide to try to fight it back. Other weeds have kind of grown up here. Like this has been on the to-do list. But I'm thinking that like if I can just cut everything down, remove the weeds out of here, maybe do a spray on the bindweed to kind of reset it, and then get some landscape fabric down before the winter comes. That will kind of keep it in a reset state until I go to plant things in it. Even with doing all those things, even with having landscape fabric down, those openings that I'm going to be planting plants into will be enough space for bindweed to take over. But I think if I do all those things, there's a good chance that with weeding maintenance, I'll be able to deal with this bindweed thing in a couple of years, rather than have it be this like non-stop, always overwhelming problem that is like kind of what the state it's at this point. My number one priority this year was to make sure that I had tomatoes, because you can't beat homegrown tomatoes. And I did it, but I never did get kind of a trellising system in place in here. In the summer, I discovered that there's like a weird pipe thing in the back here, and I thought maybe there was an old septic system or something, or I didn't know what it was that was going on. But I was talking to a neighbor, and we have a very, very strange sewage and like water system in this neighborhood. And there is actually like the main like sewage line for the area that runs through all of our backyards here. So every house kind of has like an intake into this line where the utilities can come and access it if they need to. But I'm a little nervous about it. Seems like it must be really deep down. It seems like it has to be quite buried. But my original plan for how I was going to deal with the tomatoes and the trellising was that I was going to drive in some T-posts and then like put up some cattle paneling, or do a Florida weave style where you run string in between posts. But when I found out about that pipe, I was kind of like, ugh, I don't really want to be I don't want to be putting sharp stakes deep into the ground back here, because if I hit some sort of major infrastructure pipe in my backyard, that would be such a nightmare. So I was like, okay, maybe no T-posts in this area of the garden, you know, shallow stakes only. And then it was too late in the season to get tomato cages in. So the tomatoes behind me have turned into just a complete jungle. The tomatoes that I like to grow are indeterminate or vining tomatoes. So that means they just grow and grow and grow. And so they've just been growing on top of each other. And then I go in and I dig and I find ripe tomatoes, but they're at the point now, you know, it's like the season is nearly over. I still have a few weeks, but this is the point to go in, remove the plants, and like find the fruit. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like 100 pounds of tomatoes in this jungle mess behind me. So if I go in and I dig through and I find them, then I'd be able to like throw them into the freezer, preserve them to have them over the winter. So it looks like chaos. It is chaos, but you know, it's not bad chaos, it's good chaos. The other main thing I have in the garden is I have a whole bed of peppers, and I have my eggplants, and they're also getting a little crazy, but they're not like the tomatoes. They're not turned into a jungle. There is a ton of peppers in here. One of the things that I grew was some hot peppers. So I have some jalapenos, I have some cayennes, I have some Hungarian hot peppers like in here, and they've produced quite a bit. So what I need to do is I need to come in, I need to strip off all the fruit, and then I'm gonna make a big batch of hot sauce out of it. So it's been on the to-do list for about 2 weeks, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, like a bunch of these like cayennes are like finally ripening. Like they're looking really nice. They're kind of perfectly at the stage that I like to use them. So, you know, this is also on the to-do list, but when I look through these pepper plants, these have produced really well. I'm really excited. And same with the eggplants. The variety of eggplant that I'm growing is Asian style eggplant. It does long skinny eggplants. This is Orient Express, and I've grown it for a bunch of years. I've grown it for probably 6 years because I started growing it pretty early on back at the farm. And it was always a really prolific producer. That's why it's one of my favorite plants. But oh my God, growing it in this garden with this soil, like it blows my mind. Like this one is like almost as tall as me. When I grew these plants in the past, they'd kind of like, oh, they'd be super healthy, super happy. They'd come kind of like mid-thigh height. They'd get like the height of these pepper plants. But here in this garden, the soil here is just so much better. And the amount that these plants have produced is like mind-blowing. I had no idea that they were capable of doing this. You know, so seeing still how well everything is doing in this garden has me really excited for what I can do with it next year when I actually go to grow more stuff. I didn't get very many flowers planted in this year, but one of my absolute favorite things to grow is statice, and so I'm really happy that I was able to get this in here. These plants have produced an incredible amount. Statice really likes to get established into the ground when the weather's cool. I did not do that. I planted it way too late, so I was worried about, you know, if it was going to be able to bounce back. And despite getting planted in the heat, it's just produced and produced and produced. All the flowers that are on here right now are stuff that's like grown in the last 2 weeks, because I went through and I did a massive pick on it. I have this like mountain in my carport that I just like left to dry, that, you know, I have available for it, being able to do some crafts or stuff with it. Yeah, these plants have done really well. So yet again, like seeing this has me so excited for what this space is going to be capable of growing next year. In the spring, I bought, I think it was like 1,200 Glads because I have a shopping addiction. And I got them into the ground. I got them all planted. There was a double row that I got in here, and I did a stagger planting because with Glads, you can kind of time when they bloom by when you plant them. So by doing the stagger planting, we kind of got like 2 blooms out of it and a longer bloom season. They aren't all in here. There's also a few that like I couldn't fit in that were down in the garden space. My plan was, I planted them in like clusters by the color, so that I could like, you know, show off like, oh, this is this one, this is this one. I have records of what's planted where, and I didn't get to it. I never did film the footage that I needed to show them off in the summer. But this was really pretty. This probably bloomed for about 2 months. And it, like, with them kind of planted in this mass, it was this hedge. And so it never was like, oh, hundreds of flowers blooming at the same time, but it kind of was like a steady, there was always 20 flowers blooming, so there was always something pretty to look at it. Glads, where I live, won't survive over the winter. It's just a little bit too cold here. They're just a little bit too sensitive. So what I'm gonna need to do is later on the season, when some cold finally comes and they start to die back, I'm gonna need to go and I'm gonna have to lift the corms, and then I'm gonna have to store them somewhere where they're gonna be a little bit protected over the winter. to then pull them out and plant them again. But so like, it wasn't very much money to buy the 1200. I get these from LM Bowl, and I buy like this, like the smallest grade. So they're a little bit smaller, so they're the perfect size for like when the flowers bloom. They're really good for using in arrangements. But because of that, I think the cost of them was like 20 cents each or something. So, you know, even with shipping, I think it was only $300. And so this $300 investment is something that I'm going to be able to, you know, re-enjoy year after year. But I know I hadn't really given any sort of update on it. So they did exist. They just didn't exist on camera. The last project in the yard I think that I showed here on the channel was when I finally got the shade garden kind of finished up and got some mulch down. It's been about a month, and you know, I wasn't really expecting any growth on these plants in that amount of time. The mulch is more about just starting to like deal with the weeds and everything, and it's doing pretty good. There's a little bit of bindweed popping up, which I think is going to be the story of this property forever. But the mulch has kind of like flattened down, sunk down. It's gotten nice and wet, and I think this is going to do a really good job of, you know, keeping this pretty low maintenance for come the spring. I still have lots more wood chips, so I could top this up. And one thing that I am thinking of doing is that this space is kind of like how I access down into the backyard. It's pretty dry in the Okanagan, so it hasn't been much of a concern. But this slope is steep enough that when I've watered and it's gotten wet, it gets pretty slippery. I don't want to put a staircase in here because I do want to be able to like run a wheelbarrow up and down for getting things into the backyard. But it would maybe be nice to get like a few stepping stones in, so that, you know, when it's just kind of, you know, spring, fall, there's going to be a window when it's going to need a little help for getting into the yard. So I'm thinking if I can like get a few stepping stones kind of in place, and then I come in with the rest of the mulch, that should probably do a pretty good job of keeping this area functional for the next couple of years. And, you know, there's some things here, some grass that I'm not a big fan of, so, you know, gotta get rid of it. There's one major infrastructure project, other than kind of getting the garden prepped in the backyard, that I wanted to get done this year, and I haven't given up on the idea, I think. But now's the time, and I've started in on it a little bit. So in the spring, I got the pine trees taken out of this this front area, and then I have this kind of evergreen ground cover. The plan is to completely remove all the plants in here and to build terracing. Along the road, I park my van because my driveway is always filled with garden materials. That's my plan for now until forever. But there's a bunch of evergreen that goes up there that's not on my property. Where these power lines run is kind of like the easement line. So I want to make a terrace up there where I'm not going to have anything, and it's going to be able to just be parking. And then I think with the amount of distance between here, then I'm going to need like 2 more terraces to be able to kind of get a growing space in here. I don't know if that's going to get done this year. It would be nice to get at least like 1 or 2 of the 3 in place. But if I can get the evergreen materials out of here, I can see what I'm dealing with. I've done a strip, and I know there's soil under there, but there's also a lot of rocks. And on the other side of my driveway, there's a parking area, and there's big, huge, it's just a face of rock. So as I take this out, there's a chance that there's no soil. There's a chance that this is not gonna be a great growing space, which is fine because I can build it up. I can put soil into it. But I don't want to get overly ambitious for what I'm going to achieve this year, just because I don't know the scope of this project until I get these evergreens out. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be working on for the next 2 weeks. I definitely haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve with the yard this year. I had visions of flowers everywhere and it being beautiful and everything being completed, and it kind of turned out to be the complete opposite. There's weeds everywhere. There's so many projects. It's overwhelming. I don't want to do it. But I know once I start getting these infrastructure things picked off, like these are the projects that are overwhelming. These are the things that are hard to get out and to get started and to get completed. And once that's done, you know, it's not going to be much to just start like filling in with the plants and everything. So even though it doesn't look like what I want, and even though, you know, I feel like it's going to be challenging to even get it to neutral, in my opinion, before the snow flies, I do know that there's probably 2 more months of time that I can work out here. There's a lot I can achieve in that window, you know, and it's gonna, no matter what, it's gonna be better next year.
Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time. All in one place, all on your terms. I love how easy they make it for me to build a website with their cutting-edge design tools like Blueprint AI and a library of professionally designed templates. But that's not all. Squarespace's invoicing and email campaigns simplifies running your business, leaving you more time for your customers. And it's never been easier to offer services like consultations or experiences with tools like built-in appointment scheduling, or even create member-only content to sell courses and more behind a paywall. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/youcaneatthegrass to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.